Now, the Bird app has returned and Nigerians are back clicking away on their phones without any hassle. But this did not come easy. Terms and agreements had to be decided and agreed upon before the restriction placed on Twitter since June 2021 was finally lifted. Some of the resolutions agreed before the ban was lifted include: Twitter committed to establishing a legal entity in Nigeria during the first quarter of 2022. The company has also agreed to appoint a designated country representative to interface with Nigerian authorities. The Bluebird will also comply with applicable tax obligations under Nigerian law and will act with a respectful acknowledgement of Nigerian laws, culture, and history. Meanwhile, the microblogging site Twitter, in its reaction to the federal government's decision to lift the restrictions placed on it since June 2021, said, quote, "We are pleased that Twitter has been restored for everyone in Nigeria. Our mission in Nigeria and around the world is to serve the public conversation." End quote. Well, joining me in the studio is public affairs analyst Abraham Great. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Right. And also joining us via Zoom is strategy consultant Dikbo Oyewole. Dikbo, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Right. Let me begin with you, Dikbo. Nigerians have, expressed divergent reactions with regards to the lifting of the ban, and we saw all sorts of memes on social media and the likes. Let me get your reaction, first of all, to this decision by the federal government.
Well, in the first place, the ban didn't need to happen. It didn't need to happen. It was very unnecessary. And yes, we all know that the reason for the ban was because Twitter themselves deleted a tweet by the president, which wasn't in accordance with the guidelines of the platform. But of course, after a lot of backlash and condemnation, they had to look for some wiggle room around it and then said that, okay, you know what, these are the reasons why we don't want Twitter and all of that. But for me, it's been quite expected that it will be back on around this time, because we know that elections are around the corner and the campaign window is already open. So yes, that's the primary reason why they had it back on, not because of any terms or conditions that were agreed to or anything. It's just primarily because they need Twitter as a tool for the campaigns, because all of us know the role that Twitter played in the 2015 elections and 2019 elections, and 2023 elections are around the corner. The campaign window is open. So
but Dikbo, can you validate this claim you're making? Because from the terms and conditions and agreements reached, this is not part of it. And whether Twitter returns or not, everybody is going to use Twitter, not necessarily for campaigning.
Well, the timing is quite auspicious. That's it. The timing is quite auspicious. You know that before now, the government has always been posturing with the entire conversation with Twitter, saying that, okay, this is what we want. And then saying, okay, you know what, they've agreed to the conditions and then we'll have it on. If they wanted to have it off for the reasons why they said they wanted it off in the first place, why not keep it off? Why not keep it off? It's quite strategic, really, that they want Twitter to be back on now, because while it was off, people using the VPN, a lot of people couldn't do the sponsored ads and all of that. It affected a lot of businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs. People couldn't fulfill their contractual obligations to their clients. Now, those are the tools that need to be used now for a lot of campaigns. So the timing is really everything for us. It's not just saying that, okay, that they agreed to certain terms, they'll register, they have country reps, they'll pay taxes. But the timing itself is something we need to look at beyond whatever it is that you're saying that is the reason for them having Twitter unbanned in Nigeria.
Right. Let's bring the conversation to the studio. I wonder if you shared the same perception with Dikbo with regards to the timing. a lot of Nigerians are very suspicious of the government's move with regards to this. The government is on its part is saying Nigerians should be happy that they lifted the ban, so to speak, but Nigerians are suspicious of government's move because of the timing. And I'm wondering, why are we always suspicious of government's decisions and move, and if also it is really about the campaigns?
Really, the government can't really tell us if we should be happy or not. Because when you look at the level of losses that the government actually has no understanding of the economic losses, you know, by banning Twitter in the first place. So there's a disconnect between government and 70% of the population, which is the youth of this country. They really don't understand how people engage this thing, particularly for profitability. You know, economic reason, it doesn't make sense to ban in the first place.
Right.
Now, I don't totally agree with Oyewole on I always believe that assumption is the lowest level of knowledge. You know, I couldn't assume that they actually lifted it at this point. I was in the studio on the 1st of January, 1st of October on the Independence Day, when the president stipulated that he was going to lift. But my question is, why did we wait from then till now? Why did we wait also from June 4th? In the first place, do we really have to ban Twitter in order for us to have these 5 conditions in the place? Now, some of the conditions also given are actually detrimental to the Nigerian government. Right. You don't necessarily need, for cybersecurity reason, you don't really need a social media presence in your country, because there are a lot of, you know, internet security reasons for that. You have to be careful with your internet space, but taxing them is very possible. America operates a system of TIN, which we now have in Nigeria. You don't have to be in America to be taxed in Nigeria. I don't live in America, but some of my businesses or my person are taxed in America. Right. You know, so there are ways that we could have gone about these things without creating so much acrimony. And the Nigerian youth has the reason to be suspicious. It's just that I do not believe that it is done because of election reason. Emotions are behind these things. And when you realize the people that are behind the emotion, so the president tweeted something, Twitter deleted the tweet because it's against its policy. When you look at the individual that surround the president that makes such decision, you realize that they are not the stakeholders in the coming election. So it's really not for them. The timing could have made it easy for us to assume that that's what they are doing. But the real thing is that not only on Twitter, there are several other decisions in the country that the people closest to the president seems to be making decisions that are detrimental, that are making it even more difficult for these people or the population to actually believe in this government.
I'll still stay with you on this matter, because you mentioned something now that we're delving into the conditions or resolutions reached. You talked about the aspect of cybersecurity and how it was detrimental, or how it is perhaps going to be detrimental to the government. And I want you to expatiate on that for better understanding of our viewers. How so?
You know, I mean, sometimes we have to be politically correct, but at the same time, we have to be polite. If America had had the choice, they wouldn't have trained certain people in the CIA who would eventually turn against them.
Absolutely.
Most of the people who turned against America actually trained in American ground. Now, you've got to understand that we have a new way of fighting wars in this world right now.
Right.
And the new war is cyber war, chemical wars, and stuff like that. And you really want to protect your turf. You really want to protect your environment. Bring in a third party, a company as Twitter. It's not that Twitter couldn't come on their own, or Facebook come here, or Microsoft or Google come here. Some of them are here already. But what I'm saying is, you conditioning it is almost like you saying that your foes, your adversary, your friends, everybody come into my house, come and have a flat in my house. Your house needs to be sacrosanct. You've got to really make your house to become a place that is well secure. I don't necessarily believe that we need so.
And that is why he talked about the acknowledgement of Nigerian laws, culture, and history. Don't you think?
Already that is it. Look, the platform is not used by Twitter in Nigeria. Twitter is a platform Nigerians use.
Right.
So Nigerians dictate the conversation in the first place. All the content that are on Twitter are by Nigerians, not by Twitter. We are the one to adhere to Twitter's policy, not the other way around. And when you look at it, we already have existing law. We have libel law, we have defamation law, we have internet law, we have all kinds of law that could have regulated anything. What we are seeing is that it's almost like the reaction like our government could not be wrong. If the statement, if my statement or that of any state government or any federal government violates the law of a platform, let's deal with that directly without getting into this kind of acrimony. That in itself will show leadership. If we realize that we have done something, we retract it, we rephrase it, we redraft it, we engage in such a way.
So you think perhaps this is going to perhaps shrink that space for people to really communicate as they want to at the end of the day?
You realize that people actually get even worse in communication.
Right.
Because the real thing is that the government did not achieve anything, to be honest. I can understand that they think that they've reached a resolution and what have you. Twitter is too big. In fact, Twitter is bigger than some nations. It's not bigger than Nigeria as a country in itself. But I don't think that what we have now in terms of the law changes anything, because Nigerians, and I like to say this, particularly to the Nigerian youth on Twitter are also very porous. In a very, very toxic place if you're not careful. Recently, I mean, for the last maybe 25 years of my life, I've engaged more in foreign news because I live abroad. Now, recently, I turned to Nigeria, and when you read the difference between Nigerian Twitter and every other country, you realize that when you are reading Twitter from other places, you engage your mind intellectually, you're learning things. But in Nigeria, the first thing is you say something, even now that we're on TV, somebody can be abusing you. Someone that does not even have WAEC, simple WAEC or JAM, will be writing and insulting their elders, the president, the governors. It's just not a way. You can do the same thing. That's one thing I like about the British and the American. You can still insult somebody by using the English word in a very polite manner. But Nigeria, our politics, our social media, we're still very juvenile. You know, insult is not the way to go.
So it is about the people changing their mindset towards the use of the app as it is, stemming from what you're saying. But let me get back to Dikbo. You, my guest in the studio mentioned something that I would like for you to perhaps expatiate on, if you share the same view, which has to do with the government not achieving anything at the end of the day.
Yes, it is true, and I'm really not surprised because it is consistent with how they operate. Let me give you a few examples. The border closure, for example, what came of it? The ban on selling sales, SIM cards, maybe not the ban, but the restriction on selling SIM cards for a time. What came of that before it was lifted? So you will see that this is pretty consistent with how this government has been running their thing, and a lot of us question the mindset that justifies running a government the way they choose to run it. Because I would expect that running a nation with over 200 million people, that you're a bit more deliberate and you're a bit more strategic about it. Like you rightly said, they could have come to these terms without banning Twitter, without putting up any form of hostility in the first place. But like I said, it was a smokescreen, because Twitter deleted a tweet by the president that didn't adhere with the platform's guidelines. So yes, the ban didn't have to happen. So now you're expecting Nigerians to be happy or to be pleased with you or to applaud you. I don't see it happening, because it wasn't meant to happen in the first place. It was very unnecessary. It was very, very unnecessary. A lot of money was lost. According to NetBlocks, per hour, Nigerians lost in revenue practically like $250,000 per hour. In the last 222 days that it was banned, we lost over $1 billion of revenue. But any little thing you say that we're broke, every other month you're asking for loans from different places. This is not how to run a government. We need to be very deliberate about these things. And then you're always going about, you go to the Dubai Expo, you go to Europe, and then you say that, okay, we're trying to bring in foreign direct investment. Nigeria is a good place to do business. but your actions aren't reflecting those realities. So can we be a bit more deliberate about how we run our country and how we run our economy, how we run the entire system? Because it is very important. You are dealing with lives of people. Lives of people. It's not just about, this is not something in the virtual world. This is not the metaverse. This is the real world. Can we be responsible with how we make decisions that affect the lives of over 200 million people? Even if it affects the lives of 200 people, can we be responsible and not be whimsical about it? That is the issue a lot of Nigerians are having with this government, and especially with this conversation around Twitter. They didn't gain anything whatsoever because the approach in the first place, it didn't need to go that way. There's several ways to skin a cat. It didn't have to go that way, not at all.
Right. Several ways to scare a cat, and stemming from what you're saying, the government did not negotiate from a place of strength. But if it was to address this issue in a different way, how perhaps could the government have approached it such that it would have been beneficial, and then we still get some things, certain agreements? Because looking at it, having an office, appointing a designated country representative to interface with Nigerian authorities and all of it, what more could we have done that would have been more beneficial to the Nigerian youth?
So the question is this: what was the overall objective of the terms? What was the overall objective? Was it to eventually get them to pay tax? Or was it to have a country representative, which would have meant them registering with CAC in Nigeria, having a physical office, and then having a country representative, so that in case anything happens on the platform, there's always someone they can always summon or have a conversation with or hold accountable in whatever way they did fit. So because now we're not very clear on what the entire objective of the terms are. And until they're clear with that, we can't necessarily say that, okay, this is how they should have gone about it. But that's why I asked the question: is it monetary? Is it about them paying taxes, or is it about having somebody that you can hold accountable for whatever happens on the platform? So on that, until we get answers on that, I don't believe that anyone here can categorically say that this is how they should have gone about doing this or that, because the objectives are not quite clear as to what they're trying to achieve in the end. Because initially, from the foundation, the approach and how they went about it, they didn't connect. Because the ban came about because a tweet was deleted. The ban didn't come about because certain conditions were not there, or because they didn't have an office in Nigeria. That wasn't what led to it. So how do we know which is true? How do we know what the true objective is? Because until we know what the true objective is, I don't believe anybody can hazard a guess as to how to go about achieving what we do not know they're trying to achieve.
I doubt if we would ever know what the true objective was, but a part of it was to ensure accountability and to also ensure that they pay tax to the government, stemming from the conversation that was going on at that time. So can one still say that government achieved something?
Well, in terms of paying tax, that may be some kind of win, pardon me. And in terms of having a physical presence. So the question is this: did a lot of Nigerians have to lose their means of livelihood for you to get to this point? Because in terms of saying that there's a win, can we also weigh it against the losses that were recorded due to the ban? Because you can't just have the win, in quotes, this particular win in isolation. It's not existing in a vacuum. It came at a cost to a lot of people, to millions of Nigerians. So if we regard this as a win, that means the taxes, can we weigh it against the losses that a lot of people recorded, over $1 billion? Can we weigh it against that and then determine if it is truly a win, or it is truly something just that we're just trying to scratch the surface or using it to save face?
Right. Now, let's bring it to the studio now. So much has been, Dikwa has said a lot with regards to if it was a win-win or not. But we have to move forward. we have to make the best use of whatever it is, how best we can have that relationship between the Nigerian youth, the platform, as well as the government moving forward. Because you spoke earlier about when you look at Twitter platform, when you talk about the US, the UK, it's quite different. How do we make it better, more engaging, such that the Nigerian youth can benefit much more than they are as we speak?
Well, for me, there will be a number of factors. And number one is, first of all, why did Twitter in the first place come to Africa and go to Ghana? Because they had done their research and they realized that Nigeria at that time was not more of an enabling environment for them to thrive or for them to function. Number one, registering with Nigeria CAC is almost like a nightmare, especially if you're a foreign country. I'm dealing with it. Now, secondly, in Nigeria, you still have to use generator, you're buying diesel, you're doing all that. Now, if you recall, Nigerians were actually having fun bantering Twitter, saying Twitter went to Ghana, you know, anything Nigeria, Ghana is jollof rice or what have you, is always a Twitter discourse, is a national debate, it's an international debate. Now we're dealing with that. Nigerian government could learn from that. We need to make Nigeria a place for like my colleague has said, a place where investors will think, look, I can come into this country and do business. The cost of doing business in Nigeria is very, very hard. It's very, very tough. The security in our country is not easy. So if Twitter was considering coming into anywhere in Africa, it's not going to come to a place where there's a lot of kidnapping, so they can't secure their people. I tell you this, Twitter would have rather come to Nigeria than anywhere else. And the only way they could come into Nigeria was to have gone to Ghana. You know, because they know they're just 1 hour flight away. So they're really in Nigeria. The other thing that we could look at, educating our people. You see, there is a lot of moral decadence in our society of today that we need to go back into parenting, into religious institution, and into the education sector. Need to teach people on how to debate. I went to secondary school, and that's the last that I had in this country before I left here as a teenager. But I recall we used to have things like jet hours, like what you debate, your English is, you know, you have writing competition. Right now, people can use emoji and anybody can just have a social media account. And we need to go back and really educate our people to learn how to. There's something that we need to do with our youth. They have to have what I call basic fundamental principles of approach. It's called etiquette, good moral. They have to understand that I may not agree with you, but my method of disagreement does not have to be insultive. It does not have to be derogatory. So there are a lot of measures that we can all, you know, have together outside of Twitter, Facebook, and all of these things. The world will yet evolve, and there will be more technology, and it's the youth that will use all of these things. But the government must help us in making this country a viable country for everybody to thrive in.
Right. Dipo, your final word on this matter.
The Nigerian government have to be very deliberate about how they run the country. They have to be able to set clear objectives as to what they're trying to achieve with whatever policies they put in place, because in the end, the buying of the people is very important. You can't say you're leading people and then they're not following, or you can't say you're leading people and then there's a huge disconnect, because with the Nigerian government and the masses, there's always a chasm between us. We need to do more, we need to do better to lead a nation of over 200 million people. Communicate your objectives clearly. Don't treat people like you have no regard for them. It is very important. Talking about foreign direct investment, can we look at different factors that will make our environment to be enabling enough for even local businesses? Because until local businesses thrive, I don't think anyone from the outside would want to come and invest in our country.
Right. Dikpo Oyewale, strategy consultant, and Abraham Great, public affairs analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.